How do you tell a story without uttering a word? When asked this question, many will think back to silent movies, but even silent movies had frames that would be used as stand-ins for actual dialogue. Silent movies weren't silent because they were intended to be. They were silent because of the limitations in technology and filmmaking at the time. It was Charlie Chaplin who saw around those limitations and made them his strength, and then a decade later, films were no longer burdened with silence, and the rest is history. Now, with enough time and resources, we can create just about any look and feel in visual media that we dream up. To choose to say nothing is of course not a limitation, but a creative choice, and one that Playdead's Inside boldly chooses to make. To open my critique of its silent narrative, I want to hark back to a particular music lesson I had at school when I was about 14, and when my teacher said that the most important element of music, more important than any instrument or any chord or note, was silence. Silence is what distinguishes music from cacophony, and the importance of this in relation to Inside is that its narrative is powerful precisely because nothing is spoken. The game begins, aptly, in silence. A boy dropping down from a ledge into some woods. You are the boy, and you can move, and also you can run, so you run. Only your footsteps and the still of the forest. You run on, and then you realise there are people here, and they are after you, and you must elude them. The first time I got wrestled to the ground and it was game over, I felt a genuine pang of hurt, of harm done to me. That's how fluid and natural the models in this side-scroller feel. I wanted desperately to escape because I feared what would happen to the player avatar if I didn't help him. This is how evocative the unspoken emotions are in this game. You don't know exactly what you're running from or toward, but you know you need to run. And you run from people, you run from sirens, you run from dogs. Whole cities are abandoned. You make it to a facility where people are being controlled by mind control devices, and as the player you think, this is why I'm here. I'm here to save all these people, because that is how we are narratively trained, at least in the Western world, to think. This avatar, surely, is just another of the 1,000 faces the hero can wear. This, until you get to where you're really going. When you finally get to the containment unit, the game doesn't allow you to see inside, and I have a strong belief that this is part of the inspiration behind the game's name. Something is inside, but you don't know what yet. Other facility members are looking in, staring through the window, but the player is denied that perspective. You, as the avatar, have to wheedle your way around the enormous unit to its base, where upon entering through the shaft, the sucking force relieves you of your clothes and you discover what was hidden. The Blob. Now, I call it the Blob, but officially it's called the Huddle for some reason. There is no overt explanation about why the boy is drawn to freeing this entity or what he believes it will achieve, but the understanding in most online circles is that this amorphous entity is somehow using the mind control we've seen in the facility's other experiments to call the boy to free it. And then the boy becomes a part of the Blob, and we spend the rest of the game attempting to escape as the Blob. I think it's very clear that as the player you're supposed to feel conflicted. The avatar you've played as in the game so far has, at least in one interpretation, died. And not by some action you as the player made that can be played through again, but for real. You thought you were trying to escape some authoritarian force, but in reality, you were a slave to this closely guarded secret experiment, and the experiment wants out. And break out it does. But not without, for some reason, the help of people in the facility. What can that mean? I ask because I still don't really know. Even the motivations I have laid out are simply what I'm convinced was intended, but there is not a word in the game to back any of this up. But that said, help you as the Blob these researchers do, for the obvious but inexplicable reason of helping you to escape the facility. And so on you go and on you fall until eventually you crash into this. What is it exactly? Fans of the game have just simply called it the diorama, which is almost certainly exactly what it is. But specifically, it's a diorama of the end of the game itself. Let that sink in a moment. The researchers in this facility know exactly what happens before it happens, and even aid the huddle in allowing it to happen, and it is never explained why. Eventually, the player as Bob ends up crashing into a forest outside of the facility and rolling down a very steep hill until it comes to a stop directly in a ray of sunshine. And as the player, you more than likely try to move, but you can't. You can't because the game is preparing to overlay the end credits over this backward panning shot. So, does any of this actually make sense when you put it all together? There's certainly elements that do, but as a whole, I'm of the opinion that this is not a story to be solved, as it were. Naturally enough, a game without a single spoken word, but which nevertheless does have a visual narrative, is going to be more subjective by its general nature, but inside is decidedly withholding answers. I want to take a moment from focusing on the narrative just to appreciate a few things about the game's actual design, something I don't typically do on this channel, but I feel compelled to with just how much inside has impressed me. The game doesn't play like any game I'm used to. Its physics are so smooth that it looks like an animated short made long, and its inputs are so minimal that playing it on PC I can play one-handed, something I've not been able to do since my brother and I used to play Atomic Bomberman back in 1997. The sound design as well is an absolute marvel. There are sections where you have this heavenly reverberation underwater, and then as soon as your point of view shifts, it cuts off. Another identifier of the power of silence in the creation of this game. It is at once gorgeous and curious and horrifying, which altogether makes for a compound not easily achieved. I think that though the game is not supposed to have any kind of hard and fast meaning, the clue to its bigger picture lies in the diorama. My own interpretation is that the existence of the diorama is there to indicate that the mountainside you break out into is actually just another room in the facility, that this is all just another controlled experiment for something bigger, something unseen and unknowable. That's my conclusion, but it can never be the conclusion. What I like about that interpretation, however, is that it ties the themes of mind control and manipulation in a satisfying bow, even though you never really work out what exactly is going on. I'll leave you with this. One of the most powerful moments in the game for me was escaping those dogs and gunshots in the woods at the beginning of the game, and just running. Holding down the right arrow key on my keyboard, inputting nothing else, and just running for my player avatar's life. I don't need any more immersion than what I got in holding down a single key for what must have been a full minute, until making it to an abandoned farm. There is nothing but the sound of rain and your own footsteps, and of all the games I've played, it was in this segment that I truly felt completely and utterly alone.